They say, there are people who have left home but have not left. For me, it is an umbrella. Every time it starts to rain, I hear the door open softly, the sound of slow footsteps, and the familiar smell of a rain-soaked coat. It has been 12 years, and that umbrella is still standing by the door. Every time I touch it, it is still damp, as if someone has just come back from somewhere. I still keep his old umbrella in the corner by the door, right next to the small wooden cabinet. Many people told me to throw it away and buy a new one, but I couldn't bear to. That umbrella had been with us for nearly 40 years. The wooden handle was worn. The small crack near the handle had been wrapped by him with a brown leather string. Every time I saw it, I remembered his hand, big, warm, and always trembling slightly when he buttoned my umbrella. I remember so clearly when he was alive. Whenever it rained, Arthur would run to the end of the alley, holding that umbrella, waiting. I didn't need to remind him, nor did I need to call him. He always said the same thing, something I knew by heart. If you get wet in the rain, you'll catch a cold, but I'm used to it. It's okay to get a little wet. I used to tease him. You're old and still have pride. Who says men have to walk in the rain? He laughed hoarsely. I went ahead to pick you up, not to avoid getting wet. Then he'd hold the umbrella for me, letting the rain splash all over his shoulders. I'd shout, "You're soaked again. Tomorrow you'll have a dry cough and blame it on the weather." He'd just smile, squinting his eyes. "You're already holding half the umbrella. How can I stay dry?" Back then, every time I saw him standing in the rain waiting, I felt both pity and anger. Pity because he was thoughtful, anger because he never listened when I said, "Don't go out anymore." I remember one time it was raining so hard, thunder booming near the roof. I was about to put on my raincoat when I heard him call from outside the gate, "Margaret, don't go out. I'll come in and get you." When he walked in, he was soaked, and the umbrella wasn't enough to cover him. I could only shake my head. "This umbrella is about to break, and you still keep using it." He smiled, placing the umbrella in my hand. "It only breaks if you forget it." Now he's gone, but I haven't forgotten. The umbrella is still there, standing silently as if waiting for someone to return. Sometimes I pass by and touch the wooden handle, still faintly damp, still carrying the scent of old rain. People say keeping the things of the departed only makes you hurt more. But for me, that pain is also a way to remember and to believe that somewhere, in the rain, he's still standing at the end of the alley, holding the umbrella, waiting for me. Just like every day. It was raining heavily that night. It had been drizzling all afternoon, then suddenly it started pouring when I turned off the stove. The rain was tapping on the tin roof, steady and persistent, like someone knocking softly on the door with their fingertips. I sat in the kitchen, making a pot of ginger tea, planning to sit by the window later to warm up. As soon as I turned on the hallway light, I saw the umbrella. It was tilted slightly. Not like the wind had blown it, but as if someone had just touched it. On the floor, next to the umbrella, there were a few small water stains. I froze for a few seconds. The door had been closed since noon. There was no way rainwater could have gotten in. I chuckled softly to myself. "You've wet the floor again, Arthur?" I said it jokingly, out of habit. But right after I finished speaking, the hallway light flickered. Once, twice, then came back on. I wasn't scared. Just my heartbeat slowed, and I felt something gentle, like a whisper from the past. I bent down to wipe the floor. The damp smell rose up, along with another scent I hadn't smelled in years, the old wool coat Arthur used to wear in the rain. I used to hate that smell, both sharp and musty, but now it felt warm. I sat down, sipping tea, listening to the steady rhythm of the rain outside the porch. Then, through the glass door, I saw something dark, a shadow standing by the gate. Someone, or something, motionless in the downpour. I squinted. I couldn't see clearly, just the faint sense that someone was looking in. I told myself quietly, it's just the shadow of the tree. But then, there it was. A small knock, sound, like someone tapping the handle of an umbrella on the tiled floor. 3 times, then silence. I looked back toward the umbrella by the door, still upright, still untouched. I smiled faintly. Maybe I was just imagining things. Old houses and old hearts have that in common. Both are full of echoes. That night, when I went to close the curtains, I paused by the window. Through the rain, the street lights reflected on the puddles outside, and in the shimmering light, it looked as though an umbrella was slowly opening and closing. I didn't sleep much that night. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere beyond the gate, I could still hear that quiet rhythm. Knock, knock, just like every time he came home. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sky was still gray. The rain hadn't stopped completely, but it was lighter than last night. The air smelled of wet earth, cold and damp, sharp enough to sting my skin. I went down to the kitchen to make coffee, like I had done for decades. But when I stepped into the living room, I froze. The umbrella was no longer standing in the corner by the door. It was leaning against the window, about a meter away from where it should have been. I paused for a moment. Last night, I was certain I had placed it exactly in its spot, where Arthur used to leave it. I wasn't in the habit of moving things, especially that. I called softly, "Clara, did you come down here at night?" There was no answer. Her door upstairs was still closed. I looked at the floor, faint traces of water. Not much, just a few small round marks, as if someone had walked in with wet slippers. I bent down and touched it. Cold, still damp, but drying fast. When I looked up, I noticed something else. On the umbrella handle, there was a darker patch of moisture, shaped like a handprint. I pulled my hand back slowly. The house was silent. Even the wall clock ticked louder than usual. Then, a faint clack. The umbrella tilted slightly, just enough to move. I didn't shout. Old age teaches you not to fear what you don't understand. I whispered, "It must be the wind." I opened the front door a little. No wind, just still air, heavy with dew. In the distance, my neighbor was sweeping her yard. She called out, "It was raining hard this morning. I saw someone standing by your gate for quite a while." I turned around, surprised. Someone? Who was it? I couldn't see clearly. Wearing a hat, holding an umbrella. He stood there for a long time, then left. I thanked her, but something inside me trembled. My gate had been locked from the inside all night. So, how did he know where to stand? Right there. Exactly where Arthur used to wait for me. When I turned back, the umbrella was once again by the door, perfectly upright. Quiet. Still. But I knew it had moved, and for the first time in many years, I felt I was no longer the only one in this house. That morning, the rain had stopped. A thin ray of sunlight filtered through the curtains, shining on the floor, still glistening with leftover drops. I opened the door to let in the wind and took a deep breath. The air after the rain always had that strange mix: damp earth, rusted iron, and the faint scent of Arthur's old coat. I brewed tea, 2 cups, one for me and one I placed on the small table beside the wooden chair, the chair he always used to sit in. It wasn't a habit I meant to keep. My hands just did it. like they remembered before my mind did. Every morning, one cup always went cold, just like the days I waited for him to come home, and the teapot cooled before he arrived. As I went to clear the cups, something caught my eye. The photo frame on the wooden cabinet, our wedding photo, had shifted slightly to one side. I was sure I had cleaned it yesterday and placed it straight. The frame was heavy. It couldn't have tilted on its own. I whispered softly, "Are you playing around again?" My voice sounded small in the still house. I stepped closer to fix it, but on the glass I saw a faint circular mark, like someone's hand had just touched it. I didn't wipe it off. I just looked at the photo. Me in a white dress, him in a black suit, two young faces smiling under an old umbrella. I smiled faintly and murmured, "Still the same umbrella, huh?" Then came a knock at the door. 3 times, small but clear. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't open it right away. The knocking stopped, then started again, softer this time, like the visitor didn't want to startle me. I stepped closer and whispered, "Who is it?" There was no reply. Only the sound of wind and the soft chime of the wind bell on the porch. I opened the door slowly. No one. Just a faint trail of water stretching from the doorstep. And in the middle of that trail, a perfect circular print of an umbrella. I stood there for a long time, until the sun rose higher, drying the water, and the circle faded. But in my heart, everything became clearer than ever. That afternoon, my neighbor dropped by with some cakes. As soon as she set them down, she asked, "Did you have guests last night? I heard talking in your house." I hesitated. Talking? Yes. Around 11. It sounded like a man's voice. Low and soft. "I thought maybe you left the radio on." I smiled gently. "Oh, maybe I did." But I knew I hadn't. Last night the only thing playing was the sound of the rain. That night, I didn't lock the door. I left it open, just a little. Before going to bed, I put the umbrella back where it belonged, next to the photo, where he used to stand every morning before leaving the house, and as I turned off the light, I whispered softly, not sure who would hear, "If you come back, don't knock again. The door's already open." After that morning, I began to hear more small sounds in the house, not loud, just faint, steady, almost like the quiet breathing of an old home. That night, I was sitting in the living room, sewing a torn sleeve. The rain hadn't come yet, but the air was heavy, damp, carrying that musty scent that made me think of old winters. I opened the window a bit to let the air in, then reached for the radio to listen to the evening news. But just as my fingers touched the switch, I heard it. Footsteps, upstairs. Clack, clack. Slow, light, measured, moving from the end of the hallway toward the stairs. I looked up and called, "Clara, are you still awake?" No answer, only stillness. I turned off the radio and listened carefully. A moment later the sound came again, same rhythm, same pace, as if someone was walking in circles, upstairs. That room, I hadn't gone up there since Arthur died. It used to be his little study, a wooden desk, a few books, and an old coat hanging on the wall. I left everything the way it was. I couldn't bring myself to throw away anything he'd touched. I took a small flashlight and walked slowly up the stairs. Each step creaked under my feet, echoing through the house. When I reached the top, the air felt colder, damp and heavy, and there it was again, that smell, the smell of Arthur's coat. I shone the light into the corner. The coat was still hanging neatly, but on the dusty floor beneath it, a fresh shoe print, Just one. The dust around it was undisturbed, which meant it was new. I touched the table. There was a faint round mark, the kind left by a teacup, still wet. I took a small step back, my voice trembling as I whispered, "What are you doing up here, Arthur?" The flashlight flickered, once, twice, then went out. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stood there, breathing in the cold air mixed with the faintest scent of ginger tea, the kind he always made before bed. A few minutes later, I went downstairs, holding the dead flashlight. Before entering the living room, I looked toward the door. The umbrella was still there, but its fabric was dark with moisture, as if it had just come in from the rain. The next morning I told Clara. She laughed softly. "Grandma, you must have been dreaming. The house creaks all the time." I just nodded. I didn't argue. But that night, after she went to bed, I heard it again, the same steady rhythm. Clack, clack, walking back and forth above me and stopping, right where he used to stand reading. I sat in the dark, holding a cup of warm tea, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because in those footsteps, I didn't hear a stranger. I heard someone who had walked beside me all my life. That night, it rained again. The rain was thick and cold, pattering on the tin roof like fingers drumming an old, familiar rhythm. Clara had gone to her friend's house, leaving me alone. The house felt different when it was just me. Quieter, yet somehow more alive. I sat on the wooden chair by the window, the yellow lamp casting a soft glow on the wall. On the table, a cup of tea was cooling slowly. The umbrella stood by the door, motionless, like a quiet sentinel. I turned on the radio, but the sound of rain drowned it out. After a while, I switched it off. In the stillness, I heard something faint, a soft creak, like a door moving. I turned around. The front door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it earlier. I stood up, heart steady but heavy, and walked slowly toward it. Cold air slipped in through the gap, carrying with it the smell of rain, and something else, the familiar scent of Arthur's wool coat. "You?" The word escaped before I could stop it. My voice trembled, but it didn't sound strange to me, as if I had said it 1,000 times before. No one answered. Only a gentle breeze brushed past, making the curtains sway softly. Then I saw it, the umbrella. It was no longer in the corner. It was on the porch, open. I stepped closer. Rainwater dripped from the eaves, tapping softly onto the bricks. The old umbrella stood open, tilted, just enough to cover the path from the door to the alley, exactly as Arthur used to do whenever he came to pick me up. I stood there still, listening to the rain fall onto the umbrella, a sound so familiar it made my chest ache. I whispered, "It's raining so hard. You forgot your coat again." A breeze brushed through, making the curtain dance. Through that flutter I saw the faint silhouette of someone standing at the end of the alley, face hidden, shoulders stooped slightly, not moving, not leaving, just waiting. I held the umbrella tighter, but when I stepped out, the figure was gone. Only the wet street remained, shimmering under the dim streetlights. I closed the door gently, holding the umbrella close. It felt warm, as if someone had just passed it to me. That night, I didn't sleep much. I left the umbrella open on the porch, and long after midnight, I could still hear the soft tapping of raindrops on its fabric, steady, patient. And in the darkness I whispered, "I know you remember the way home. Next time, come inside. I've made some tea." I woke up around 3 in the morning. I don't know why. Maybe it was the rain, or maybe It was the light on the porch. I was sure I had turned it off before going to bed. But now the yellow light was glowing softly through the crack in the door, swaying like someone was sitting outside. I put on a sweater and stepped quietly into the living room. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the clock, steady, calm, unhurried. As I passed the window, I stopped. Through the half-open door, I could see it, a shadow sitting on the wooden chair by the entrance. The figure was slightly bent forward, hands resting on the knees. I couldn't see the face, only the dark shoulders of a coat that looked damp with rain. I held my breath. My feet wouldn't move. Then I heard it, the sound of tea being poured. Slow, steady, careful, just the way Arthur always poured it, letting the water spill a little before wiping the edge with a folded tissue. I whispered softly, "Arthur?" No answer, but the faint steam of ginger tea drifted through the air. The scent was warm, familiar. I took a few steps closer, my heart pounding, half afraid, half unwilling to break the moment. When I was only a few steps away, the porch light flickered. The shadow dissolved into the light. All that remained was the chair, his old coat hanging on the back and a cup of tea still steaming. I stood there, unsure whether to cry or smile. On the table lay a tissue, folded neatly, just like he always did after breakfast. I reached out, touched the cup. It was warm. Inside, a few drops of rain had fallen, forming tiny ripples on the surface. I whispered, "This time remember to dry your shoulders." There was no reply. Only a soft breeze slipped through the open door, making the umbrella beside me sway gently. I sat down on the chair. It was still warm. The scent of rain and ginger tea wrapped around me. That scent was our mornings long ago. The light flickered once more, then went out. The room fell into darkness. But I didn't move. I just sat there, my hand resting where his used to be, and whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for still coming back. I know this road very well." Last night, I heard the rain again, not rushing, just small waves, like someone was tapping on the old roof. Last season, rain is not usually cold, but that night, I felt cold, not on my skin, but somewhere deep inside. I woke up early. As I opened the door, humidity filled the house, the smell of earth, rotten wood, time. In that air, there was another smell, the smell of an old wool coat, musty, warm, a little rainy, a smell I thought I had forgotten. On the table, there were 2 cups of tea. One I made for myself last night. The other, I don't remember when I poured it. The smoke was still thin, but it was clearly fresh. I sat down on the chair, looking at the 2 cups of tea standing side by side. Just like every morning in the past, one strong, one weak, he would swap the 2 cups and laugh. To be fair. I laughed, then realized I was laughing at the empty space in front of me. By the door, the umbrella was still standing neatly. The fabric was faded, the wooden handle peeling but strangely clean. Every time it rained, I never had to dust it. It was as if someone still remembered to wipe it for me. I took the umbrella, stepped out onto the porch. The wind blew gently, carrying with it the steam. I opened the umbrella. The click sound rang softly in the quiet morning, a sound I hadn't heard in years. I opened it only halfway, covering my side, leaving the other side open. Facing the chair next to the porch, that place was where he sat every morning reading the newspaper and sometimes pretending to sleep so I wouldn't have to sweep the yard. The rain fell gently, drizzling on the brick steps, each drop forming a streak of light in the early morning sun. I sat still, listening to the rain hitting the umbrella, steady as breathing. Suddenly, a strong wind blew by. The umbrella tilted to the right, just right toward the empty chair. I didn't hold it back, let it tilt. I looked, feeling as if someone had just sat down next to me. I couldn't see a figure. I just felt the cold air around my shoulders suddenly warming up. I said softly, my voice trembling, "Is that you? This time. Let me cover you." There was no answer, but the wind stopped, and for a moment I heard someone breathing very softly. Then the scent of ginger tea spread out, clearer. I didn't dare turn around, just sitting like that, listening to the sound of rain, the sound of the clock, and the sound of my heartbeat mixed together somewhere. After a while the rain stopped. The sky brightened. The sunlight penetrated through the edge of the eaves, shining on the wet brick floor. The steam rose. The light made everything hazy like smoke. I felt vague and strangely peaceful. I folded the umbrella and placed it neatly by the door. On the handle there was still warmth. I didn't know if it was from me or someone else. Before entering the house, I turned back to look out at the small alley. At the end of the alley, sunlight spread on the water, and in that light, I thought I saw the shadow of a person walking slowly, holding an umbrella, tilting his head as if listening to someone calling. Not clearly, but enough for me to whisper, "You can go anywhere. Just remember the way home." Then I closed the door. The house was quiet again, but not as empty as before. At noon, a neighbor came by and whispered, "I saw your house open this morning. There was an umbrella on the porch, but it wasn't raining." I just smiled and didn't explain. I just said, "Oh, he must have forgotten to bring it again."